All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining me for our GW Paralegal Studies quarterly legal brief. Today, we're going to be talking about licensed legal professionals. I'm Toni Marsh, and I am the director of the George Washington University Paralegal Studies program. And as such, in that position, I spend a lot of time studying paralegals and paralegal models and following changes in the industry, and this new trend, this move toward creating more and more licensed legal professional programs is really big news. This is a big deal. People are going to be affected by it all over the country. Professionals are going to be affected by it. The general public, the courts, the schools. This is probably the biggest development in the paralegal world in, I can't even think of how many years. It may be the biggest development ever. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Let me share my screen with you so I can show you my PowerPoint. Here we go. There we go. So you can all see that? All right, good. Okay, so here we go. Let's see. All right. So licensed legal professionals, and let me just begin by saying that the term that I'm using, licensed legal professionals, is a generic term. Everything in the law, most everything in the law is governed at the state level. The state bar, certainly things having to do with the legal profession in general, are governed at the state level. So state bars, state courts, state legislatures pass the rules, pass the laws, enact the rules that govern the legal profession generally. And now I keep saying generally and in general and for the most part, because there are certainly exceptions to that. The federal bar, of course, is governed at a federal level. But the vast majority of what you encounter as a paralegal, or certainly in this arena, will be, just go ahead. Okay, will be done at the state level. So every state that has initiated or explored this kind of program gives the program its own name. And I don't know of any two states that use the same names. There are probably some out there, but they all have different names. So what I'm calling them, for purposes of just being able to talk about the whole phenomenon, is licensed legal professionals, because it describes exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about people who have a license, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the difference between a license and a certification, what it means to be licensed and unlicensed. These people are operating in the legal arena, and they are professionals, right? They've had some sort of training and education that qualifies them, experience, training, education, testing, certification, whatever, licensing, that qualifies them to operate in a certain manner. So as I said, I'm Toni Marsh. I'm the director of the GW Paralegal Studies program, which is the program that is presenting this quarterly legal brief. We do this 4 times a year. I'm based in Washington, D.C., and our program is, we offer a master's degree. We offer a graduate certificate for people who want to become paralegals. And we will be starting very soon, in fall of 2022, if all goes as planned, we'll be offering a bachelor's degree completion program as well in paralegal studies. All right. So here's what we're going to talk about today. First, we're going to talk about the access to justice crisis that precipitated this whole movement toward licensed legal professionals. I'll describe the models to you, the different kinds of models of licensed and unlicensed legal professionals. We'll talk about the practice areas where LLPs operate. I'll talk about the education on professional requirements to become an LLP. We'll talk about ethics and unauthorized practice of law as it is reflected in the LLP arena. And then I'll give you a quick survey of the various state LLP programs. So let's start out by talking about the access to justice crisis. It is indeed a crisis. It's huge. It's a big deal. And it does not just affect low-income Americans. Everybody knows, I think most everybody knows, and certainly if you're learning this for the first time, it wouldn't surprise you to learn that low-income Americans are greatly affected in their access to justice. They're greatly held back in their access to justice. So legal assistance, even rudimentary legal assistance for basic matters, is extremely expensive. And it's just out of the reach of certainly low-income Americans. So 86% of the civil legal problems of low-income Americans receive inadequate or no legal help. You've probably heard and know that in criminal matters, people can get legal assistance, right? You can have a lawyer appointed for you. The court will appoint a lawyer for you if you are involved in a criminal action and you can't afford a lawyer. But in a civil action, you don't get that, right? You have no constitutional right to a lawyer in a civil action, and the court will not appoint one for you if you can't afford one. There are, they call them there are pro bono. There are organizations out there that will offer their assistance for free to people, even in civil actions. Many law schools and paralegal schools have legal clinics where they will provide legal assistance in civil matters to the public. But there's simply, and then there's another thing that they call low bono. So there's pro bono and low bono. Pro bono is where people will offer legal assistance for free to certain, to people. But then there is also low bono, where they'll offer these legal services at a lower price. But there are only so many lawyers out there, even in criminal issues. There are only so many lawyers there. So certainly in the civil arena, you simply can't get access to the help you need because there's just not enough lawyers out there that are offering services either for free or at a low cost. So 86% of civil needs go unmet. 30 million people each year, 30 million people in the United States lack legal representation in state court matters. They go to court with no lawyer. 40 to 60% of legal needs go unmet for middle class Americans. So again, no surprise to learn that low income Americans are having their needs unmet, but it might surprise you to learn that middle income Americans are also being affected by this. I mean, you think about it. I mean, just myself, and I'm not low income, I'm not high income, I'm just, in the middle, right? And I'm having an issue with a condo that I own, and that there's leaking and the board's not fixing it and whatever. I can't afford to go out and hire a lawyer to handle this. I mean, I could, but it would be a hit. So I'm trying to do it on my own, and I'm not a housing lawyer, but I'm dealing with it on my own, unrepresented, because I can't just go out and spend, a reasonable amount of money to get a lawyer to represent me on this, right? So I happen to be a lawyer, so I'm able to get the information that I need. But if I weren't a lawyer, if I were, a real estate agent instead, or that's not a good example, but whatever. If I were a school teacher instead, where I was making a similar income, but I wasn't, trained in law, I just don't know what I would do, right? I'd have to figure it out for my own. So this is where, even middle income Americans are taking this hit. Family law cases are by far the area where the hit is the worst. 80 to 90% of cases involve at least one unrepresented party. Again, divorce is expensive. Child custody cases, paternity cases, child support cases, these things are expensive. And a lot of people go into those cases thinking that they can handle it on their own because we're all family here. And they end up really being deprived of their rights. But it's not just low income Americans and middle income Americans. It's not just the clients who are suffering from this lack of access to justice, but the courts are suffering. there is a real problem with the courts because people who go into court unrepresented are clogging up the legal system. So they file papers wrong, they don't file at all, they don't show up, they bring the wrong papers, they bring the wrong records. People go through the process and they're unhappy because inevitably, well, not inevitably, but more often than not, these cases turn out poorly because you weren't properly represented. Once in a while, you get lucky and it comes out right. But all of these things go wrong. The courts have to stop and explain things to you. The judge has to explain things that, the clerk, the scheduler, the bailiff. And that takes up time that the court could be spending on moving legitimate, well-run cases through the system. So the courts are being bogged down in trying to assist these unrepresented or poorly represented parties. Recognizing all of this, the ABA has issued a resolution encouraging regulatory innovation. That's what they call it. So we got this problem, right? The people are unrepresented, the courts are being bogged down by this, everybody is suffering. All of society is either directly or indirectly suffering because of this lack of access to justice. So the ABA steps in and they say, okay, lawyers, fix this, right? You're lawyers, you're smart, you're used to fixing problems. That's what lawyers do. Fix this problem. Figure out a way for us to increase access to justice to the low and middle income Americans who are suffering from a lack of access to justice, and for the courts who are suffering because of the resources that are spent on addressing access to justice, and then the rest of society that is being affected because the courts are bogged down and people are not getting their rights. So the ABA has invited people to figure out a way to fix this. Not only the ABA, but the Conference of Chief Justices. So these are the judges. These are the guys who are out there and the women who are out there in the trenches, seeing what's going on. And they passed a resolution as early as 2015, asking the legal field to address this problem and to try to find a way to fix it. And then again, in 2021, they were back at it, issuing another resolution saying, you know what, we didn't fix it yet. We still got to fix it. We've got all of these other issues that are now making it even more important that citizens have proper access to justice and that the courts run smoothly. So guys, figure this out. And so that's what people did, right? And so many states, and we'll go through the models in the states in a moment, but many states have come up with different models to try to meet these unmet needs. And they've come up with, there are licensed and there are unlicensed legal professional models. Now, let me just take a minute to explain what it means to be licensed, and what it means to be unlicensed and what it means to be certified. So being unlicensed means you're trained, perhaps. You may know what you're doing, or you should know what you're doing. You've got some sort of skill level, some sort of education, some combination of education experience or special training that allows you to know how to do a certain task, right? Paralegals are not licensed. They're very, very good at their jobs. They know what they're doing. They do tremendous work, but they're not licensed. Excuse me. Now, some paralegals are certified. What does it mean to be certified? It does not mean that you've got a certificate. That's different. You go to, like I remember I said, excuse me, sorry about that. In the beginning of our talk, I said that GW offers a master's degree. It offers a graduate certificate in paralegal studies. That's an 18 credit credential. You come in, you take 6 courses, you get a certificate in paralegal study. When you finish, you graduate, you literally we give you a certificate, but you can say, I've earned a certificate in paralegal studies. That does not mean you're certified. It means you've got a certificate. Being certified means you've gone out and you've taken a special test administered by a body that is not your school, by a professional organization in your field. So in the paralegal field, there's NALA, there's NIFBA, there's NALs, those are all acronyms for professional organizations that operate in the paralegal arena. They've got these nationwide standardized tests that you can go in, you can take that test, and if you pass that test, you will be certified. It's just a way of the state saying, okay, this particular paralegal who is now certified not only has an education, and we know that you know she has completed her education, we know what she knows, but she's got this specialized skill, this special knowledge that she can now prove to you by showing you the certification that she's got. So that's certification or certified. Licensing is different. Licensing is an official, it's an official credential administered by a government body, not just a professional organization, but some sort of governmental or quasi-governmental body that allows you to practice in a sphere and allows you to deal directly with the public. That's the difference. Doctors are licensed, lawyers are licensed, nurses are licensed because they deal directly with the public. Paralegals who are not licensed are not allowed to deal directly with the public. So paralegals have to work through a lawyer. They can do all of the behind the scenes work. They can do the research. They can solve the problems. They do everything. They figure it all out. Then they have to like give it to the lawyer and say, okay, go tell this to the client, right? Because the paralegal, an unlicensed paralegal, cannot deal directly with the public. Now, what we are looking at now, this new development is licensing. We are now licensing paralegals or non-lawyers. We're licensing these people, and we are allowing them to deal directly with the public. So this is where, this is this big sea change that I was describing in the beginning. So now, here are the three models that have emerged in response to all of these invitations to, figure this out, fix this problem, somebody figure this out. Three models have emerged. You've got legal navigators, they are unlicensed. You've got legal document preparers, they are unlicensed, but certified usually. And now you've got these licensed legal professionals. And I'm gonna go over these in detail. So legal navigators, again, they're not licensed. The legal navigator is not court staff. They don't work for the staff. Generally, legal navigators operate literally inside the courthouse. There will be an office or some sort of desk or a bureau or whatever. There are people that operate physically within the courthouse, and they help you to literally navigate your way around the court. They will, not just physically, that would be like a tour guide, but with some context, right? So they'll say, you've got this paper you need to file, there's the clerk's office, let me go show you where it is. They'll assist you in moving through the system. They will often provide just emotional support, just be there with you because they know their way around the courthouse and they know their way around the system. They can answer judges' questions, they can answer, but they cannot in any way provide any kind of advice or guidance to the public, to the public. These people are trained, they are not certified, and they are not licensed. Often legal navigators will be volunteers. They're often volunteers. And it'll be like a lot of law schools, their law students will go over and work as legal navigators. Again, some paralegal programs have their students go and work as legal navigators, whatever. So these are people that are interested in the law. They're not lawyers and they're not paralegals usually. They're volunteers. They're not always volunteers, but often volunteers. Then you have legal document preparers. Again, these people are not licensed, but they are certified and they do deal with the public, but they don't advise the public. So legal document preparers are authorized to prepare and submit documents, and they have them in many states, but the California law, for example, allows them to prepare and submit documents, quote, in a ministerial manner. Meaning they can't tell you which documents you need. You can come to them and say, I'd like to get, my husband and I are going to get an uncontested divorce. we know that these are the documents we need to complete. Will you help us complete these documents? And then the legal document preparer, can complete those documents. They can provide general factual information, but they can't provide legal advice. So for example, again, if you went in and you said, my husband and I want to get an uncontested divorce, and every state calls it something different, but there's something called an uncontested divorce in most states, which means you're going in for this divorce, you both agree, you agree on the property division, there's no kids involved, you're just going to go in, you guys are both going to submit your paperwork and you're going to be divorced. There's nothing to be worked out. So you can go to a legal document preparer and say, we want to do an uncontested divorce, and here are the papers we want to fill out. And then she will say, okay, here, well, I'll fill them out for you. And here's where now bring these to the clerk, bring these here. You've got to get them stamped here. You're going to need one of these, and here you go. You can't go to a legal document preparer and say, my husband and I want to get divorced. We're not fighting over anything. We've agreed on everything. What should we do? She can't say, oh, you want to get an uncontested divorce then, because now that's giving you advice. All right. So it's a fine line, but that's the way that it works. A licensed legal professional now is a whole different thing. The licensed legal professional can actually go out and select the forms for you. They can prepare the forms and they can file them. They can inform and advise you. They can say, oh, you and your husband are in complete agreement. You don't have any kids. You don't have any property to split. Fine. Here's the kind of divorce you should get. And now let me help you with the paperwork, right? They can communicate and negotiate with the other parties, and they can in some states, in some circumstances, appear in court. All right, so what are the benefits of these various models? SRLs, by the way, are self-represented litigants. So they facilitate access to justice. So that's the big one, right? They increase access to justice for self-represented litigants, those people, those low-income and middle-income Americans, and even high-income Americans, whatever, who don't hire a lawyer, who don't want to hire a lawyer for whatever reason. They help them to understand and navigate their cases, right? So they do increase access to justice. That's the biggie. They enhance the effectiveness of the courts, right? Because now you've got, instead of the courts being bogged down with these poorly represented people, or unrepresented people, they've got nice, that somebody walks in with that nice little stack of papers and says, Your Honor, here it is, we've filed it. Can you just declare a divorce? Boom, declared, and you're done, right? So things run more smoothly. And that helps the whole court, the whole legal system. It builds public trust in the legal system. So people who use good legal navigators, who do encounter legal navigators and legal document preparers and LLPs, they feel better about the legal system. They don't feel so lost and afraid and victimized by the system. It allows advocates, lawyers, to supplement their client services. So if I'm a lawyer and I've got a law firm, I can use a legal document preparer or an LLP, a licensed legal professional, and have them deal with a lot of the business that I don't need to deal with, right? A lot of the routine stuff I can hand over to them. And maybe I didn't do divorce before because I'm not an expert on divorce, but I can hire, as a lawyer, I can hire a licensed legal professional and allow them to take that business, which expands my profitability, expands the range of services that I can offer. And it allows lawyers to operate at the top of their licenses. So in other words, the lawyers aren't filling out completing forms, which is something that a lawyer doesn't need to be doing, right? The lawyers can be free to strategize and be rainmakers and build the business and do the things that only the lawyers can do when they've got other people managing the tasks that they don't need to be doing. And then for the non-lawyer professionals, for the paralegals and the legal document preparers and the legal net, they're able to utilize their talent and their education, right? So people become paralegals because they love the law and they want to work in the law and they want to help people. They want to be challenged. That's what you do when you're a paralegal. Being able to take it that next step just makes the profession that much more exciting and rewarding and challenging. So what are the practice areas where we see licensed legal professionals operating? far and away, the number one practice area that you see is family law. And you saw in the beginning, that's where the biggest need is. So it works out really well. So, and that many people are going into court unrepresented, right? In these family law cases, you saw 80 to 90%, at least one party is unrepresented, 80 to 90% of the cases. So there's this tremendous need. And also it's one of the easiest areas to practice in if you know your way around, right? A lot of it is just saying, okay, what's your situation? You're both in agreement, no kids, no property, good. This is the kind of divorce you are going to get. Here's the paperwork, let's fill it out, really simple. And even if it's a little bit less simple than that, a little bit more complex, well, we do have some issues with the children. Still, those are the kinds of questions that a good, solid, well-educated, well-trained, non-lawyer professional can address. Landlord-tenant eviction, which kind of goes together, housing, that's the next biggest area. And again, a lot of that is form heavy, a lot of that is showing up to court. A landlord wants to evict somebody, the landlord shows up in court, the tenant doesn't, and the landlord gets whatever she wants, right? At the expense of the tenant, because the tenant just didn't know what he was supposed to do. Same thing with debt collection, same thing. Again, you'll have the creditor, the guy who's owed the money, she shows up in court. The debtor, the one who owes the money, she doesn't show up in court because she's not sure what to do. And we get judgment for the creditor without the debtor even ever being able to tell her story, because she was afraid to go into court in the first place, or she didn't know what to do. So again, in those areas, housing, family, and in family law, and I used to practice family law, what you get a lot is you get people that go into, with divorces and dissolutions and separations, that's very emotional, as you can imagine. And frequently in these situations, one person in the relationship has more power than the other person, either psychologically, emotionally, or physically, or financially, or whatever. And very often you'll get people who show up to family court, and that person will say that, the weaker person in the power dynamic will go into court and say, just give her whatever she wants. Just give her whatever she wants. I just want to get out of this marriage. I'm too tired to fight. I'm tired of it. Just fine. Take the house. Fine. Take the kids. Do whatever you want. I just want out of here. And then, 6 months later, the person who gave everything up realizes that giving everything up was a lot more drastic and a lot more damaging than they ever anticipated. And now it's too late to go back and fix it. So where you've got this unequal power dynamic in family law, in housing law, in debt collection, domestic violence, you really want to be able to provide some sort of moral support or something especially to the person who's the weaker party in that power dynamic, to ensure that they don't make decisions that they're going to pay for the rest of their lives. Conservatorship, elder issues, another area, immigration and citizenship, another area where you'll see these professionals operating. So how do you how do you enter this field if this is something you're interested in? Licensed legal professionals and legal document preparers consistently across the board, every state that has a program or is considering a program, a paralegal credential is the baseline, right? So you got to start out by being a paralegal. So you've got a paralegal credential, or they'll say something like 24 credit hours of legal education, which where you're going to get that in a paralegal program, right? So it's basically it's a paralegal credential is the starting point. And then beyond that, there's usually some amount of practical experience, a year, a number of hours, 500 hours, whatever, but there's some sort of practical experience element, which makes sense, because if you're going to be going out there and advising people or representing people or working directly with people, you want to be experienced. You want to have been around a little bit. You don't want to be fresh out of school. With legal navigators, and then there's going to also be a test, right? In every state right now that has a licensed legal professional or the legal document preparers has some sort of test that you need to take to prove your proficiency. In addition to the paralegal credential, the number of hours, there's going to be some sort of a test. And then there's also, and I don't have this written down here, but there's also going to be some sort of ongoing legal education. So again, every one of them has some sort of requirement that you participate in continuing legal education of some sort, 12 hours a year, 10 hours a year, whatever, but some sort of continuing legal education. Legal navigators generally just have training. It's task-specific, task-dependent training as part of the program. So if you want to go be a legal navigator, I was just watching a video this morning about legal navigators in the Baltimore court system. You go in and you take this short class, this training session, and then you can go on and work as a navigator. Ethics and UPL. So in order, those of you who are currently paralegals know that paralegals or really any non-lawyer is forbidden to practice law, right? That's the way it's been traditionally. So people who aren't lawyers aren't allowed to practice law. What does it mean to practice law? That definition, again, it's kind of hard to pin down. Some states define it, some don't. I've come up with a generic all-purpose definition, and the way that I define practicing law, and it sort of synthesizes all of the other, all of the various definitions and case law and things that are out there, is exercising your independent judgment over a set of facts and circumstances in a way that will change the legal position of a lay person, right? So I look at a fact pattern, or another way to describe it is applying general knowledge to a specific matter. So you come to me and you tell me you slipped and fell and this happened and that happened. And then I go back and I look at my general knowledge and I say, I know, okay, here's the law of slip and falls, and here's what, here's what liability means, and here's how negligence works. Here's how we assess damages. I have all this knowledge right in my head. I take all that knowledge, I apply it to your situation. Oh, you fell at a store and this happened and that happened. You should do this. I would advise you not to sign the waiver that the store is giving you, because in doing so, you'll be giving up your right to sue. And I think you've got a good chance of prevailing in a lawsuit. So knowing what I know about liability and the law and everything that I know, applying it to your specific fact pattern, you fell down in the store. I'm going to tell you, you should not sign that waiver. Now I have changed your legal position, right? Now, all of a sudden you're a litigant. So I've changed your legal position. That's practicing law in a nutshell. And there are laws against practicing law. There are also rules. There are bar rules. There are state bar rules that prohibit non-lawyers from practicing law. There are rules that punish lawyers for allowing non-lawyers who work with them or for them to practice law. And there's case law that that addresses the practice of law or the unauthorized practice of law. And there are rules of ethics. So again, every state's got its own rules, set of ethical rules that govern the legal profession. There's a federal set of ethical rules that govern the federal legal bar. And then those professional organizations that I told you about earlier when I said some orgs have tests, NALA, NIFBA, NALS, they also have their own rules, the American Bar Association. So everybody's got these ethical rules that govern or pertain to the practice of law. And every one of them forbids non-lawyers from practicing law, forbids them to practice law. So what they've done in the states that now are going to allow non-lawyers to practice law is they have some sort of a waiver or exception to whatever is the rule in their state governing UPL. So for example, Utah, which has a great licensed paralegal professional program, Rule 14802 of their rules creates an exception to the unauthorized practice of law for licensed paralegal professionals. That's what they call them in Utah, LPPs. In Arizona, same thing. Section 7-10 creates the position of legal paraprofessional, and it outlines the tasks that they are allowed to do, which include things that would normally be considered practice of law. The Washington State Court Rules defines the scope and practice of a triple LT, which is what they call them in Washington State, and again allows them to practice law or to do these certain, specified acts. So this map, I'm going to tell you, this is a survey of state programs, and this map comes from a document filed by a woman named Christy Carpenter, who is a limited, I always get it wrong, she's a triple LT in Washington State, which was the first state to implement one of these kinds of programs. It's limited license legal technician, I think triple LT stands for. And Christy Carpenter is a triple LT. She's very involved in the profession. She's very involved in the program. She's a brilliant woman, quite prominent in the field. Washington State has decided to sunset its triple LT program. So all of the people who are currently triple LTs or the people who are currently in school to become triple LTs are going to be allowed to finish and continue practicing, but they're not going to admit any more new triple LTs. And there's a lot of reasons why things went south in Washington. And a lot of it, frankly, is political. The personnel on the court changed, and it went from a majority who favored the triple LT to a majority who didn't. Also, Washington State, the barriers to entering the program were just too high, right? There was an unreasonable amount of schooling that was required. It was an unreasonable amount of professional experience that was required. It just made it very difficult to enter the profession, prohibitively difficult for many people. A few intrepid souls pursued it anyway, and one of them is Christy Carpenter. So she filed a document with the Washington State Supreme Court, urging them, advocating, petitioning them to not sunset the program. And it's just it's a brilliant opus work. So this map comes directly from that work. But as you can see, the states highlighted in green currently have some sort of a licensed professional program in existing. So we got Washington State, Utah, and Minnesota. The red, Arizona, has a limited licensed professional program and a document preparer program. The yellow states are the ones that are considering or exploring a limited license program. And actually, I think there's a few states that are missing because they've been popping up pretty fast. The purple states have a document preparer program and a limited licensing program is being explored. And then the orange states, a task force is exploring both of these programs. So this is a very detailed map, but the big ones are Washington, Utah, Minnesota, and Arizona that have the existing programs. And then, places like California that are exploring both. So you got Washington, Utah, Arizona, and then this is a list. And the last time I checked, it was current, but like I said, these things are changing so quickly that it's hard to keep up. But Minnesota has the program. It's a pilot program, so it's not permanent. That's why it's on the list in the works. California just opened a public comment period for their legal paraprofessional program. Oregon, Colorado, New Mexico, Minnesota, Illinois, North Carolina, Florida, DC, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Vermont, and Virginia are all exploring these programs, are in some phase of that. So that is the end of my my prepared remarks about this program. And so I'm going to do two things. First of all, I would invite you, if you're interested in this topic, or if you're interested in law and you'd like to learn more about anything, there's a couple of ways that you can continue, you can continue to explore legal issues. One is by attending a course sampler. So here at GW, we offer a couple of times a year a course sampler. It's a 1-week course. It's free. It's actually a week of our real, it's a week out of our real paralegal studies program, but it's like the introductory week. And you can come in and you can participate in class. There's a live class session with the professor. There's written materials. You can do you write a paper. You can take a quiz. There's discussions. So it's a way to get a little taste of what it would be like to be in paralegal school, and also to explore an issue. And every time we offer the course sampler, we focus on a different issue. So we focused on voting rights. We focused on, the attack on the post office. We on insurrection, all kinds of things. So if you're interested in the law and you just want to learn more about the law, that'd be a fun thing for you to do. Our next one is coming in February, and if you're interested, you can register with Lucero. Every year, we just had it, just passed, but every year on the last Wednesday before the first Monday in October, we do a Supreme Court review and preview. I'm sure you know that the first Monday in October is when the Supreme Court starts its new term. So the Wednesday before that, we always have a session where we review the interesting cases from last year, and we tee up the cases to look out for in the coming term. We just had ours on September 29th. It's great fun. And I absolutely recommend that you attend that if you like. So keep an eye out for that. And again, you can talk to me or Lucero. If you're interested in joining the paralegal program and enrolling in our program, you're more than welcome to do that. I'd love that if you would do that. Here's the deadlines. October 1st passed for the priority deadline, but December 1st is the final deadline. It's possible we would accept applications after December 1st, but not guaranteed. And there's the link if you're interested. I think those are all the commercials. Then that's it. So this is me. And by the way, we're going to send you these slides. So you'll have all this. You don't have to be writing this down. You'll have all of this. But that's me at the top. That's my email address, and that's my phone number. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions about our program or about the LLP discussion we just had. Lucero Flores is the program rep. Same thing. Feel free to call her if you want to talk about the law, see what other programs are out there for you, or what other quarterly legal briefs we're going to be doing. If you're interested in learning more about just sort of paralegal careers, you're welcome to contact Nicole Mintz. She's our director of career services, and she knows everything about everything to do with careers. So if you want to get some details on that, you're welcome to contact her. And that is it. So I'm going to stop talking now and see if anybody's got any questions. Let's see. So first of all, we have something in chat. Are there now navigators in states other than New York? I heard this was only offered in New York State. Perhaps that's changed. There are legal navigators. There's legal navigators in a lot of states. They're in a lot of states. I know DC's got them. I worked as a legal navigator when I first moved to DC. I know Maryland's got them. I mean, they're all over the place. Many of them have. Now, there are different levels of formality, but they are over, all over the country. If you have a question, you can either ask in chat or you can just unmute yourself. Let me get my cursor. How do I get a task force going in my state? That's a great question. What state do you live in, Jessica? Do you know? Do you know? I know you know what state you live in. What state do you live in? You may not want to say so. But let me just ask you. Pennsylvania. Okay. I would say this. I'd say if you are interested in starting a task force in your own state, if you're interested in getting something like this started, I would talk to, I'd start by calling your state bar association. That's the first person I'd call, because usually it's a bar issue. So start by calling your state bar association. And if they don't know anything, they'll probably be able to steer you to the right, maybe the Supreme Court. You may need to call your state Supreme Court. But it usually originates with the state bar. That's a great question. I love to see people being so proactive. That's terrific. Good to know about the navigators. Any other questions? What a fabulous time this has been. Anything else? Well, listen, I want to thank you so much for joining me. It has been a pleasure. Barb, thank you so much for joining me. It's so good to see you here. As I said, we'll be sending you the recording of this session. We're going to send you these slides. Oh, wait, we do have a couple more. Let's see. Thank you. Oh, what's the salary for an LLP? Great question. The salary is whatever you want to make it, because you are working for yourself, right? So you can go out and start your own business, and you can bill yourself out at whatever is the going rate in your area. Now, I can't give you a hard number of what LLPs are earning, but I should know that, and I don't. So I'm really glad you asked me that. I'm going to look that up, and I am going to when I have to remember to do this. So when we send you the slides and we send you the recording, in that email, I'm going to include information on the salary, because I need to know that. But thank you for asking that. Great question. All right. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate you joining me. And can I explain how that works? Can I explain what works? How owning your own business would work? What you would do is you'd go and you'd get licensed, and you would set up an office just like anybody else sets up an office. You'd get a PO box or an address. You'd get some systems on your laptop. You'd buy some legal software that would allow you. There's always document software. So say you're doing a family law practice, you'd get some family law software, and you would start marketing your business the way anybody markets a small business. What's interesting is that what's interesting about that is I've given this presentation before to different audiences, and one of the audiences that I gave this presentation to was a group of educators, right? A group of program directors, people like me who run paralegal programs in other states. And we talked, of course, we spent a lot more time talking about the educational element because they're educators. And we talked about what if you were to put this into your curriculum, what kind of classes would you offer? And one of the things that we decided we should offer would be a course on business, on starting a business, on business practices. So that's a very good question. But yeah, that will be addressing. Can an LLP buy a law firm? In some states, they have just started a new, I forget what state, it might be Utah, where their state bar is now allowing non-lawyers, so maybe LLPs, to have an ownership interest in a law firm. Does GW offer LLP? No, but we offer paralegal studies, right? So for right now, you can get that first paralegal credential through GW. Now the LLP, so in a lot of cases, in order to be an LLP, you don't need additional. You just, and so I've got to get that, but you get that paralegal credential, you have experience, and then you take the test. Well, we don't currently offer it, but keep your eye, watch this space, because we are absolutely planning to offer specialized LLP training. Absolutely. Is it the same as an independent contractor? Well, yes and no. So I think you're thinking of an independent contractor paralegal, who operate now, and they can operate anyway. They're not licensed, right? So an independent contractor paralegal is a person who works for lawyers on an independent contractor basis. So say I'm an independent contractor paralegal, I've got all these lawyers, and they call me up and they say, oh, I need you to write a brief for this case, and I need you to do this task for this case, and whatever. So I work for myself, but I'm working with lawyers, not with the public. The LLP works directly with the public. There does not have to be a lawyer involved. That's a good question. Anything else? You guys are asking great questions. Any chance triple LTs will be offered a role within IP law, artists and creatives? That's a really good question, Barbara. It's possible. I mean, I don't know, maybe in a state like New York or California, maybe they would, where there's such a concentration of artists, there, maybe they would see a need to do something like that. What you should do, because there's a public comment period going on right now in California on their paraprofessional, get on that public comment space and talk to them about that. Probably tough road politically. It's all tough politically. Yep, that's absolutely right. Yeah. But go comment in California. You got 110 days. It's probably down to about 106 now. It was a few days ago that they announced it. But you got about 3 months. So I'd get to California and comment that in California. That's, of all places, California would be, the place where IP would be really relevant. All right. She's involved. Good to know. All right. Well, that looks like our time is up. And thank you to everyone. And look for an email from me with slides, the recording, and information on LLP salary. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.